Good evening and welcome to the fourth in a series of forums with those seeking office on November 7th that is being brought to you by Community College and the Citizen. These are shows that are shown on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and played on the college's radio station Win 89. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 7th, the voters in the 13th Legislative District for the Cuyahoga County Legislature will go to the polls. The district includes much of the center of the city of Auburn. It is currently represented by Republican Timothy C. Lattimore, who is seeking a third term in the legislature. He is being challenged by Democrat Robert Nodzo. The position of a member of the legislature pays $10,100. It is a part-time job. Currently, the 15-member legislature is divided with 8 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and 1 independent. With more than half of the legislature up this year and several competitive races, this year could be a decider as to whether or not the legislature reverts back to Republican control, which it had for decades, or stays in Democratic control, which it has had for the last 2 years. Representing the press today, as always, is Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, who has been with us for roughly 10 years, asking questions each campaign season. Prior to the taping of the show, we did a coin toss to see who would be making their 2-minute opening statements first, and then reversing that order at the end for closing statements. Our candidates who are sitting in the order of their opening statements are Republican Timothy C. Lattimore, who is on the Republican Conservative and Independence line, as well, and then we have Robert Nodzo, who is on the Democratic and the Auburn First Party. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Thanks for agreeing to do this. We'll start off with your 2-minute statements, and Mr. Lattimore, you're up first.
Well, thank you for having us, Mr. Boyer and Mr. Cosentino. It was like deja vu walking through the college today. It seems like not just yesterday, but Rod Serling dedicated this particular studio many years ago, and walking through the Institute for Application of Geospatial Technology, which is probably one of the nicest technologies that we have here. Jim Walsh brought it here, and it was very nice. But it was nice to work with Dr. DeCinque, President DeCinque, in regards to even putting in the new lights, which are cooler since my last time here. So we got a NYSERDA grant, and that was great. But anyways, what I want to do is, my point of view and thought leadership for a series of strategic initiatives that are targeted to provide a basic for executing economic development strategies to provide transformational employment opportunities for the residents of Cuyahoga County, centered in the cloud, climate, clean energy, cybersecurity, and digital infrastructure, smart logistics, business sector. The initiative that I wanted to highlight today reflect the experience in local government, both as mayor and of the city and now as a member of the county legislature. The initiative has developed during my current term in the legislature, and the framework for the same was evolved while I was chairman of the Cuyahoga County Power Utility Agency. Does that mean I'm supposed to stop?
When you get to red, you have to stop.
Oh,
you have about 30 seconds left.
Well, anyways, the technology that we have with the Institute for Application of Geospatial is a platform that we should be using. It's a NASA platform. It can revive this community. Oh, there's a red. Okay, I got to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. We'll now hear from Robert Nodzo, who is on the Democratic and Auburn First lines. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, CCC, for having me today. My name is Bob Nodzo, retired teacher, entertainer, former hairstylist. And before throwing my hat into the ring to run for county legislator, I reflected on what I could bring to the table. The first thing that came to my mind was being a problem solver. During my 20 years as a teacher, that skill was much needed for student success. At the beginning of the year, I would give my students assessments to see where they were academically, and from there, a long-range plan was developed for the year. As the year progressed, I would periodically check and troubleshoot and tweak instructional goals. This would be accomplished by working with special area teachers, my colleagues, and with my principal. Parents were also a part of this, as I would impart strategies that they could use to further their child's progress. As a teacher, it was paramount to be able to work with others for student success. whether it be by the aforementioned parties or by attending workshops and staff development days. This I will bring to the legislature. Problem solving, as in everyday life, is crucial for achieving personal and public goals. I will bring this to the county legislature, taking a problem as a whole and breaking it down into smaller chunks to achieve the objective and outcome. As with each journey, it begins with the first step. I will work diligently as your legislator to accomplish the needs of the county and the people of my District 13. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nodzo. We'll now hear from Mr. Boyer, who gets to ask you both questions. You can ask them individually to you, or if they're for both of you, we'll flip back and forth. Who goes first? If they're for you individually, if your opponent wants to respond, you have 1 minute to respond for follow-up. Mr. Boyer, welcome.
All right, thank you, and thanks for coming here to the debate, and hoping we can bring out some of the what separates the two of you as candidates, so the voters can make an informed decision on November 7th. One of the issues I want to get into here today, obviously, we've had some issues or some challenges with Owasco Lake and water quality, and that certainly affects the whole county, but certainly Auburn, where your district is. So I'm going to have a series of questions on that, and the first one I'd like to start with is just what has happened, especially since the blue-green algae first showed up last year in the treated water. Since that time, there's been a lot of work, or a lot of calling on the state to step up and help out. A $2 million grant came in for treatment or filtration systems. We had the Finger Lakes Hub established. We've had some watershed projects started and completed. All of that said, though, the question is it enough? Has what has happened so far been a successful effort in your mind, and what more do we need to do?
Okay, this is for both candidates. So, Mr. Lattimore, you have 2 minutes on this.
Did I go first the first time?
When we do questions, we go back and forth. We start there first.
Okay. Well, as some of you know, I've been around for a little bit. In '87, when I was running for council, I think the Citizen did a nice piece in regards to, I was up on Sam Adams Lane, and I said that there's, billions of gallons of water, and if it was oil, we'd have a fence around it with guards. That was when the prison was going to go into Moravia, and I said we should put in infrastructure then to protect the lake from any kind of sewage, pick up Groton, Moravia, ship it down the railroad tracks on the west side of the lake, hook up all the different houses and camps along the west side so that we can take all the material right off and get it into the Auburn sewage treatment plant. I think that would have been a good move. I think that would have been a good investment. It was probably $10 million then. As we know, the cleanup of lakes is in the billions. We did have a problem with Little Sodas Bay. I did call on Senator Schumer to help dredge that, and he did. He came up with millions to help Little Sodas Bay, and hopefully we can call upon our elected officials to do the same. When we had a fish farm down in Groton, which was putting in a lot of phosphorus, we had our senator then was Nodzo, worked very diligently in regards to the Speedies permit so that we could shut that operation down from putting in too much phosphorus. Yellow means what now?
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds to wrap it up. But I mean, lake issues have always been one of mine. In the Owasco Flats, it's taken like 7 years to do it, and again, I had to call on some elected officials to get the permits. Senator Schumer helped us through the Buffalo region, and water quality is the issue. My grandbabies swim in it. Recreational drinking water, we got to have it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Mr. Nodzo, on where we are with lake quality and evaluating the county's response.
Okay, very good. Well, beginning steps were made when the governor gave us a grant to get the filtration systems going in Auburn and in Owasco, but it's only the beginning. It's a problem that not only in Owasco Lake, but in Skaneateles Lake, Hugo Lake, statewide, it is a problem. And every dollar that we need to fix this problem, we need to do. And we've only touched the surface of it. Until we can say our lake is safe, We have to do everything precautionary. And every single person in the community, in the county, is a part of this to help solve the problem. From city residents to county residents to farmers, we have to just do our job completely in order to eradicate this problem.
Mr. Lattimore, you'll have 1 minute.
The Wasco Flats is a good idea. The other streams, for every mile of stream bank we have, that's 10 tons of soil per year in the lake. The two things that are in the lake that weren't there when I was a kid growing up is the amount of soil that we have. The runoff that's coming off the land is getting more severe with every weather event that we have. We have to put in a buffer strip, which I called for back in '87. We need green belts all the way around the streams, and if we have to compensate the farmers for putting those in, we should do it. We've got to have clean water, period.
Mr. Boyer.
Well, speaking of farming, I'm interested in your thoughts on one of the issues that's under review now is our regulations, rules and regulations in the watershed. A lot of people have called on stronger or more restrictions on farming as one of those changes, but I'd really like to open it up and just say, as we look at these rules and regulations being revised now, what specific changes would you like to see happen?
Okay. Mr. Nodzo, you have 2 minutes on this subject.
Okay. Changes I'd like to see is once again problem solving, looking at the situation as a whole and breaking it down on what we need to do. Everybody is involved with this, whether if we're talking about agricultural, we're talking about big farms, small farms, and there may have to be some regulations for everybody to follow. And as Tim said, some may have to be compensated or through grants to help this procedure, because we live and breathe by the water. So we have to make sure it's safe.
Mr. Lattimore, on this issue of farming regulation.
Well, I think, industry, as I mentioned to you, the speedies permit that was being violated by the fish farm, we got it shut down. The operation, let's say with Welch Allen, I mean, they put in some kind of metal, chrome thing that back in the day we had to put in a wastewater treatment system on site. We've shut down the fracking throughout the Finger Lakes. So I have no problem with telling industries, whether they're farm industries or commercial industries, that they have to tighten it up. I mean, if we find that, well, I mean, everything needs phosphorus. So, I mean, if we can collect the phosphorus on the farm and take it to someplace that really, really needs it, like out west where the soils are very weak, I think that we could do it, and we could do it to a profit to the farming industry. So if we do some kind of treatment, on the farm before they even put it out on the, land spread it, I think that would be a good idea.
You both, just to follow up, because you both mentioned the idea of compensation for farms, like if we're going to ask them to take some acres out of production, other measures that they may be asking. Where do you think, should that money be coming from? The county general fund, from state sources, from federal sources? And in other words, how are you going to pay for such a measure?
Okay, Mr. Lattimore, you'll go first.
Well, probably the best watershed protection is in New York City. I think that we should duplicate what they're doing. I mean, they haven't had filters in New York City, and they do everything to protect their watershed. And for some reason, that system hasn't gone afoul yet. So whatever New York City's doing is great. The situation in Skinny Atlas Lake is disturbing because we never felt it was going to be there, and then the find that the poison is below the water intake valve is really dangerous. So anything that we can do to tighten it up, and I think that if we compensate, it should be from the feds.
I think we
Mr.
should
Nodzo.
look. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I think we should be looking at all models and exploring which model would be the perfect fit for our lake. And we have to go to the state. We need state funding for this, and it shouldn't come out of the county's pocket totally, but we need support because it's going to be a big project, and there's no way around it. We have to work diligently, state, county, city, to make this work.
Mr. Lattimore, you have 1 minute.
Well, we did get the elected officials, our Senator DeFrancisco and others, to give us the $600,000 for Dutch Hollow. As I said, you know, and I'm very critical of our soil and water conservation department to try to rip-wrap the streams so that we don't have that soil that belongs on the farms in the lake, which is giving the nutrients to the vegetation. So, you know, I've done it in the past, get together our elected officials to make sure that we have some resources in order to restore the streams.
Mr. Boyer.
One other sort of funding related question, you know, in two of the agencies, or two agencies that are not part of county government directly, but certainly are part of the agricultural community, are the County Soil and Water District that you mentioned, Mr. Lattimore, as well as Cornell Cooperative Extension. Right now, in this year's budget, the county's paying about $250,000 to Cornell Cooperative Extension for their programming and $650,000 to Soil and Water. Is that funding level for these groups too much, too little, or just right? And kind of explain why you feel the way you do.
And that's for both.
Yep.
Mr. Nodzo, you go first.
Okay, I don't know too much about the numbers, but the question is, what are they doing?
Yeah, well, and should we be putting county money into those agencies?
Absolutely. And are they doing their job? And is it cost effective? And does it serve the purpose of why they're inactive or active?
Sure.
Mr. Lattimore, on the budget for both Soil and Water and the Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Cornell Cooperative Extension is funded not only by us, but by state and federal.
Sure,
and when
certainly.
we give them money, it multiplies. So I have no problem giving them the funding that they need. You know, we have other invasive species that they're studying, like the ash borer and other things. But I mean, to have Cornell's name in the community is absolutely essential. I mean, I've always indicated that we should be the diamond, you know, from our learning institutions in the north, the Clarkston, Rochester, Syracuse, and Cornell. We should brand ourselves as the learning, you know, centers that surround us. So, in Soil and Water, if we have to give them more in order to keep the lake clean, I mean, bottled water is very expensive. So, anything that we can do to save our lake and our quality of water, we should be doing. And there again, it multiplies.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
All right, I'm going to have a specific question for each of you. The next portion here of the debate. I'm going to start. I think we've been going back and forth, so I'll start with Mr. Lattimore. The question for you is you're here running for county legislature for your third term. In the first 2 terms, you've also run for mayor 2 years in. So for voters, I think a fair question for you is, do you anticipate running one more time for mayor in 2 years? And if so, why should they elect someone who may not be committed to fulfilling a full term?
Well, I think that, you know, campaigns are interesting. They do bring out different issues. And one of the issues that when I ran for mayor was the water quality at the lake. I think that Bob Gage and Porch Talk, we actually were up on Sam Adams Lane again, explaining that the water quality was going down and it should be an issue with the campaign. And for some reason, Corporation Council took it down from Armoire or whatever the cable company is. So I think campaigns are good. I don't think that they're a bad idea. You know, Mr. Nodzo is running against me now. I think that the issues that the public wants to hear is they'll have the best candidate.
But the issue is, are you committed to serving this 4-year term, or is it possible you'll try to become mayor again and therefore create a vacancy that needs to be filled?
I love this community, Auburn and Cuyahoga County, and I normally show up where I'm needed.
So yes or no on running for mayor?
I will probably stay on the county.
Okay. Mr.
Nodzo, you'll get 1 minute if you want.
Well, if you want to chime in on that.
If you want to chime in, and then Mr.
I'll ask my question
Boyer
to
has
you.
a specific question.
Oh, no,
You're good?
no, I'm good.
You're not running for
I'm
mayor.
good. No, I'm going to run for
He's not
senator.
going to run for mayor?
You're not running for mayor?
I guess I should, in all fairness, say you're going to run for mayor in 2 years, but
All right.
the thing I wanted to ask you, Mr. Nodzo, is obviously you're brand new to running for elected office, and you're going up against a person that really has more experience than just about anyone in serving in local government in this county. Mr. Lattimore has held office at the county, at the city level, and he's been doing it for multiple decades. Why should voters go with you, given this vast disparity in experience?
That is a very fair question. Tim does have a long resume of political office, and I'm a newbie. But I come to this with my eyes open, my ears open, and I'm ready to learn, ready to dig in, and ready to see how the machine works, and why things get done, why they don't get done, and how can we accomplish more than less. I'm ready to go to work. I work hard. I worked hard as a teacher. I work hard as an entertainer. And I'll keep working hard if elected to this position.
Out of fairness, Mr. Lattimore, anything to respond? You have 1 minute if you wish.
No, I'm good.
Experience
Okay.
question? All right. Well, we have a county manager position that Mr. Lattimore probably knows more than anyone else in this room, whether we're going to have a hire here soon or not. But the question is, no matter who we bring in, there's going to be the issue of how will it work, and it hasn't worked too well over the past decade or so since we've had it, the county administrator job. So for both candidates, what do we need to do as we go forward to make this position more effective and perhaps result in less turnover?
Okay. And I believe the question, since Mr. Lattimore had the first of the individual questions on the issue of county administrator, how to make it work better, Mr. Nodzo, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. I look at this as like a football team. You have a head coach, you have the team on the field, the offensive team. The coach sends in the play, implements the play, the players have to run the play. If the players do not know their job, their responsibility on who to block or what route to run, then the play will not be successful. Same thing with county administrator. Legislators have to know their place, have to know their responsibilities, what they need to do, creating policies so the administrator can implement. If that doesn't happen, there's backdoor deals, and left doesn't know what right is doing, and it causes problems. And how is an administrator going to be effective if he doesn't or she doesn't know what's going on? So you need continuity. Everybody needs to know their place.
In your analogy, who is the coach? Is it the legislature or the administrator?
Well, I look at the administrator as the coach, and the players need to run their place and knowing their place.
All right. Mr.
Mr.
Lattimore,
Lattimore, the
I'm
question
the
about-
manager. I never heard the analogy in terms of county, so I was curious about where you see the roles.
Well, growing up the Whitefield, put me in, coach. The issue of the county administrator, I was got an email from the chairman saying that we have a gag order, so we really can't talk a lot about the history. But I mean, right now we spent a lot of money with some consultant to come, and then they're going to come in and take a look at how we do things. And as I've said for a long time, that we should have a smaller legislature, number one. I mean, 15 people are very hard to deal with. And I'd like to see what a county executive would look like. I mean, Joni Mahoney seems to get whatever she wants from the elected officials in Albany. I mean, the governor's very, very good to Onondaga County. And I would like to explore whether or not that would be a more efficient way of doing business instead of having, you know, county managers. I got the red thing again.
It's okay. Mr. Nodzo, you have 1 minute on this
Yes,
subject
I'd like
as well.
to piggyback with what Tim said about legislators. There's a lot of legislators. And with the weighted voting that some legislators have, it could turn into a problem. Favors being spoken, and I'm all for a smaller legislator base and with an equal vote, so that at least we have ownership. We have full ownership of the vote that we put in.
Mr. Boyer.
All right. Well, you know, speaking of weighted voting and balance and all that stuff, there is a pretty narrow division right now between Republicans and Democrats in the county legislature. Keep in mind, your party chairs are listening to your answers right now. But basically, you know, they've both been out there making a case for why, you know, it should be give the Republicans control or give the Democrats control. So I'm asking you as candidates, does it make a difference if your party becomes the majority party? How will that affect change for the better? So for both candidates, sort of make the case if you want to. I mean, if you feel like it's not that relevant, then say it's not that relevant. But if you want to, make the case for why your party should be in control.
Mr. Lattimore, why should the Republicans be in control?
Well, let me just say that under Democratic control now, as I just said, I had a gag order for not discussing some of the issues that went on with our past administrator. So, I mean, I like open government. I think I've always been open to the press whenever they've asked a question about what really went on. I think I've been truthful. I don't like behind closed doors. I don't like 3 men in a room, whether it's Albany or whether it's on the 6th floor, or 2 men and a lady in the room on the 6th floor. I'm for open government, and you know, I can work with Democrats. I think that you know, if the subject is right, I'll be 100% behind them. And it doesn't matter what label they're wearing. I've shown that in the past, and I'll show it in the future. I have no problem working with people who want to get things done and get it done the right way. So I'm there.
Okay. Mr. Nodzo, why should the Democrats stay in control?
Because we're the best. No. Well, number one, we've had a balanced budget last year, and we're looking for a balanced budget this year, so things are working. But that's not the only thing. The thing is getting things done, working across the aisle. I think back to when We Are the World was recorded, and all these superstars were showing up at the studio, and Quincy Jones put a sign at the front entrance, and it said, "Check your ego in at the door." And if we all just come together as human beings, not as Republicans, not as Democrats, but for the good of the community, that's why the people elect us, to do things, and not to say, oh, Republican has an idea, Democrats, oh, we don't like it. No, put the idea on chart paper. What can the Democrats add? What can the Republicans add? And do what we're supposed to do. And that's how government should work. It shouldn't be a wedge. It should be an open circle.
You have 1 minute.
As I said, you know, I like open government. I think the people deserve open government. I've always been truthful about, you know, working with Republicans and Democrats. I just know that a lot of times things don't get done because of politics. I mean, like, I've saved probably the city and the county millions of dollars in regards to their health insurance costs. And I used to be on the Health Consortium Board, but the new leadership, the Democrats, thought that 45 years of insurance experience wasn't good enough to serve on the board. So I have some problems with playing politics.
Mr. Boyer.
Obviously, the county chairman does make a lot of important decisions about who serves on what committees and various things about the issues that are prioritized in the legislature. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask you each, you're going to be voting on who chairman is, no matter how this election turns out. The winner will be there in January doing that. So what qualities do you look for in a chairman or chairwoman? And also, as part of that answer, maybe you can critique how Chairman Batman has performed in that duty in the past 2 years that he's been there.
Mr. Nodzo, you have 2 minutes on this subject.
From what I have read, from what I have heard talking to legislators and people in the district, Keith is a person who is open. He has welcomed both sides of the table in discussions. He is he wants to do good things, and like I said before, problem solving is the key, and it can't be a one-sided team. It has to be a full team, and with his knowledge and with his openness, I would say he would be a good candidate to keep on doing what he's doing if he wants to do it.
Mr. Lattimore, on the issue of what would you like to see in a chairman, who would you vote for?
Who would I vote for?
I think that was.
Well, I
who
did
would
say that.
me?
Feel free to.
It's
If
big
you're throwing
money.
your head in the ring, you can do that right here too. We like to make news here.
Well, I think I've sold more papers than Keith has over my tenure. I mean, I look at a person's past. I mean, this community college is my alumni, and the Institute for Application of Geospatial Technology, the IAGT, is a platform that can really bring this college back to its former greatness. The leadership when he was at the college, I think we probably went overboard in Fulton, and so some things that have been done under his leadership I question. So we'll see what happens after this election.
What do you want to see in a chairman, though, no matter who it is? What are the important qualities to have?
Well, I want to see people that are in the room that have some experience with the subject matter that's being discussed. I think that the chairman has played Democrats against Republicans. I think he's divided us more than brought us together. It's unfortunate, but he plays politics pretty hard, and I understand it. I mean, I've been around long enough, not that I'm not offended. I just get up and put my 2 cents in, which normally ends up being a savings to the community.
Okay, we just want to let our listeners and viewers know that we're in the middle of the 13th County Legislative Forum that is held here at Key Community College and sponsored by not only the college but the Citizen. We have in the studio today both candidates who are running for the 13th district. They are Timothy C. Lattimore, who is on the Republican, Conservative, and Independent lines. He's the incumbent, seeking a 3rd term, and his challenger is Robert Nodzo, who is on the Democratic and Auburn First Party. They are being questioned by Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of the Citizen. Mr. Boyer.
All right. A shared services plan is due next year. From the governor has given that assignment to all the counties, and this year CUGA decided to defer 1 year to pick up the work next year. So with that in mind, I'd like to run down a few areas that we've been doing debates all month now, so we're hearing a lot of ideas being tossed about. So at this point, I'd like to ask you to just your thoughts, your gut reactions to a handful of areas that have been discussed as possible consolidation opportunities. First being public safety. We have a sheriff's department that covers the whole county, but we also have a city police department, a number of village departments, as well as state police covering the county. Is that an area where you think we could explore consolidation, and why or why not?
So, Mr. Lattimore, shared services on law enforcement.
Well, let me just say that in '91, when the moderator was going in as mayor, on that particular race for re-election for council, I said that the donut towns in the city should have sewer and water, shared services, and public safety. As you see, the fire trucks are normally running from the city of Auburn out to the surrounding towns more and more, and not getting any compensation for it. So I think that we should definitely look at that. But just soft costs. I mean, the consortium, the health consortium that we put together is saving the city, millions of dollars just in their health costs. So the more soft costs we can do, whether it's our IT department or, it doesn't have to be brick and mortar so much, because brick and mortar is very hard sometimes to get together. But I have no problem with shared services with public safety. Public safety is the #1 reason we're in business, and it's costing millions of dollars. I mean, the city police and fire is like $16 million, and the taxes that they collect from their property taxes is $8 million. I mean, we've got to come up with some solutions to the overhead.
Mr. Nodzo, on the issue of shared services, but specifically on law enforcement.
Okay. In this day and age, we are looking at every dollar that is spent and made. And if shared services is a plan that can work, that's beneficial to both city and county, then it's a good thing to look at. But we have to look at it in the long term and see what the benefits are. Are there going to be problems? We have to iron out those problems. And if we can do that, and if both parties are in agreement, it's all about saving money and providing safety to the county and city.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
Another area is assessors. Every town hires or has a paid assessor. The city of Auburn has an assessor. We have a county real property tax office. Is that an area where we should focus in and try to consolidate, maybe with a county-wide assessment program?
Mr. Nodzo.
I think that would be something to really look into, is having a county-wide. And that way we know that what they're going out, they're doing their job and making sure assessments are being made properly, and it's under one umbrella. I'm all for it.
Mr. Lattimore, shared services, assessors.
Well, in regards to assessment, it always is good to have one particular agency looking at every farm, every house, with the same type of eye. I mean, I used to run, back in the day, how to fight your assessment, because there used to be a welcome stranger tax. Like the new guy on the block, all of a sudden because he paid more for his property, he's got an assessment that's twice what the other guy's is that's been there 10 years. So equalization is supposed to fix things, but it doesn't. And I think that fair and equal taxes is what we should be doing. And yeah, I'd like to see one countywide assessor. So when he's looking at a farm in the north or he's looking at a farm in the south, he's got the same eye. So I'm all in favor of having one assessor.
Mr. Boyer.
One more is highway. We've heard a lot of stories over the years about county plows going through towns and picking up the plow, or going over one road to plow the one further down. So a lot of people have been talking this year about we should look hard at consolidating there. That could end up though being jobs, so that's a tough one for some people to swallow. So what do you think about highway department consolidation?
Okay. Mr. Lattimore, highway departments.
Well, I think what you're mentioning is where the county picks up their plow when they go through the city. I think one of the city managers sent one of the plows caught a catch basin, and the city manager sent a bill to the county, so we stopped doing that. But anyways, I had mentioned that no matter what we do, whether or not the towns take over the plowing from the county or the county picks up more, that who's ever employed will stay employed, whether by the town or whether by the county, that they're not going to lose their employment. I mean, that's number one. And a lot of it is it's hard to get everybody together because the overtime situation that evolves. I mean, the county doesn't pay a lot for their employees, so that there's a lot of men and women who depend upon that overtime to feed their families. So somehow we got to resolve that issue.
Okay. Mr. Nodzo, on the issue of highway departments.
Yes, we want to save jobs. We want to save jobs. We want to keep our roads clear and clean and safe. Once again, it's something that we have to look at dollars and cents. Is it going to be worth it, what we're doing? And all this stems from the almighty dollar and how we can work things between county and city and making sure roads are safe and clear. We have 500 miles of road. We have to keep clear.
Mr. Boyer.
Well, I didn't exhaust every possibility there, so I just want to give you each an opportunity open-ended. Is there anything else that you really think we could zero in on here with shared services? Another area of government that you see duplication right now?
Okay. Mr. Nodzo?
As far as shared, I mean, what we're doing now is we have the motor pool. We've combined that with the city and county, and bulk buying salt for the roads. Anything shared space, small tools, small trucks, anything that can help save money, keep people working, but saving money is what we have to look at. We have to look at every aspect of what's going on in our county and city.
Mr. Lattimore, other items that you would like to see?
Well, we were founded by the English, so we have city, towns, and villages. Other states are more competitive because they were founded by the Spanish, where they have one government for the whole state. I've been working with some of the surrounding counties, Seneca County, like Mr. Nodzo just mentioned. You know, some bulk buying with our energy, gas and electric. Hopefully, we can put out some bigger bids and maybe get better pricing on our gas.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Well, an important issue in any campaign is jobs and whether we have enough and what we can do to bring in more, and that leads to, you know, what county government is involved in as far as economic development. One of the biggest investments the county makes is the $350,000 that goes to the Cugue Economic Development Agency, and so I'd like you to both just evaluate that group, CETA it's often referred to as far as the job they've done so far. What have they done well, and what would you like to see them do better?
And this question goes first to Mr. Lattimore.
Economic development has always been you know, I can remember Mr. Cosentino and I flying down to Texas to make sure that Snyder General didn't go to Brownsville, Tennessee. My part of that overall package was the $1 million savings in our health care costs here versus Brownsville, Tennessee. That building is now owned by Tessie Plastics. So what we do is very, very important. The one-stop shop I helped develop in my other past careers. I'm all in favor of one-stop shop. I mean, but I'd like to see a division between our Chamber of Commerce and our economic development. Right now, the person wears two hats, and I'd like to see that separated so that we can have economic development. I mean, Steve Hyde up in Geneseo, he's the #1 economic developer in the state. I took all the planners and economic development people up there to say, copy whatever Steve's doing up here and bring it back, and we'll do it. And I think that parts of those things have been accomplished. You know, I've seen Mr. McMasters, and then Andrew Fish, and now Tracy. You know, we've got to get out and produce, because, as I said, the overhead that we have with fire and police and all the other operations that we have, we need more tax base, and we're shrinking. So, you know, anything we can do that way is helpful.
Mr. Nodzo, on the issue of the $350,000 committed to CETA, the Cugue Economic Development Agency.
Okay. If you look at Genesee Street, you'll see buildings, storefronts being filled. You're seeing restaurants. When I'm playing out with my band, one night we were playing at A.T. Wally's, and during our break I walked outside and the streets were bustling with young adults. And restaurants were full, and busy, and that's how CETA works. CETA works to help small businesses get started and show how they can have longevity. And during the interim, they're looking at what other bigger businesses that we can bring in. So you've got an agency doing what they're supposed to be doing, and as long as they keep progressing and doing what they're doing, why not? Why not keep them on?
Mr. Lattimore, you'll have 1 minute on this.
We fund the CETA with our gaming revenues from Oneida. Now, Oneida County gets like 22 million from the Oneida Nation, and we get 400,000 or something from our portion of it. We get nothing from Delagro. I mean, when those deals are cut, it's very, very important for economic development. So we have to be more conscious of when we sign these contracts or go after these contracts. But CETA can do better. Does it take more money? Maybe. So I always want to see job creation.
Mr. Lattimore, or excuse me, Mr. Boyer.
All right. Well, I want to address the drug abuse issue, specifically opioid abuse that we've continued to see. I think, Mr. Lattimore, we've sat across from each other at these debates too many times now talking about this issue, and it continues to be a struggle. So at this point, I'd like to ask what legislators can do in their role to help deal with this problem, and therefore what you would like to try to do if you get reelected or if you get elected as a legislator.
Okay. Mr. Nodzo, you're up first on the issue of opioids.
Okay. First off, I was a victim of this. A young gentleman broke into my house while my wife was home alone and stole money. And later on, when I came home, I was playing a gig at Westminster Manor. The gentleman came back again. And I went out and I confronted him. And it was a scene out of Law and Order, the way the events progressed, with eventually a neighbor of mine tackling the young man and cruisers pulling up and arresting him. Now, he was arrested and he was put in jail, went through some rehab, and a year later, my wife and I are sitting on our back porch and we're listening to the scanner, and the address where he was living, the mother had called in and he was ODing at his residence. So it is a serious problem. And the saddest thing about it was a former student of mine many, many years ago, and who was a really good kid and a fine student, one of my favorites in that class that year. And somehow down the road, things happened, events in his life happened, and it turned to this. And if anything, I'm validated to do anything I can as a legislator to make sure we combat this problem.
Mr. Lattimore, on the issue of opioids and the response in the community.
It was, I think, 4 years ago that I started out my opening comments in regards to, I want to just take a moment and talk about a heroin problem that we had. Instead of talking about job creation or one of my other topics that I love to talk about. But everybody looked at me like I was, from another planet. But I mean, just this week, we had 5 deaths within my district, which is a small district. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've encouraged HEAL. That's Kevin Jones and Joe Campanello doing an excellent job. But on the ledge, what I've done is pass the pawnbrokers situation where it takes longer for these kids to pawn jewelry and what have you. And we are now joining with 8 other counties to try to sue the opioid industry for the costs that we have in our county for for this situation. I mean, we're working with the hospital and the nursing home. They have some beds. You know, we're putting that lawsuit together to get the money. I mean, years ago we got big tobacco money, and we probably didn't use it in the right way. Hopefully when we get this money that we can actually go after the opioid addicted kids. And I mean, I work with these kids all the time, and I'll do anything that, you know, to help them.
On the lawsuit that you brought up, I mean, the county has not, to my knowledge, they haven't formally, the legislature hasn't formally voted to move ahead on that. So I'd like to get your position. It sounds to me like you're saying you support that, doing that, but I'd like you both to kind of state whether you support it or not and why.
Well, I mean, I don't agree with the president too often, but I mean, I think he came out today with doing some more against the opioid corporations. They told us it wasn't addictive, you know, and it is addictive, just like the cigarette company said, you know, there's no problem. So I'm all in favor of waking them up and making sure that they know that we're alive, that we're paying attention here, that they're, you know, killing our kids. And, you know, what's nice about HEAL is that this is not a moral issue. I mean, Bob talks about one of his students, you know. I feel the pain of these parents.
Mr. Nodzo, on the issue of the lawsuit and either pursuing it or not pursuing it.
The lawsuit is a tricky one. To join on to it would be a good thing, but looking at it, it's a case-by-case deal. And litigation can be tied up for years, which is, you know, it's okay, but we have to look at the end result, the time and the effort to go through these cases, case by case, and see how they rank as far as missed work time or getting fired from a job or what have you, the economics of it. And if we, you know, we do sign on and we do get a settlement, we have to do it totally towards education and helping out.
Okay, Mr. Lattimore, you'll have 1 minute on this.
Wasn't too long ago on one of those other campaigns that you mentioned, Jamie. I gave a shout out to Amy Cox, who was having a little bit of difficulty getting into the high schools and educating our kids as to how bad this is. I want to continue to, you know, thank Amy for, you know, pushing forward and getting the kids some education. I mean, this is a serious thing, and it starts very, very early in the schools, and we've got to educate our kids.
Okay, Mr. Boyer, you're down to your last question.
Last one, all right. We haven't talked about the county office building yet, so let's close on that one. It's an older building that needs a lot of work, people are saying, and the question is how to go about it. Do we look to build a new facility? Do we renovate the existing one and deal with quite a bit of asbestos that's in that older building? Quite a range in costs. So for both candidates, you know, what path do you support as far as dealing with the county office building?
And I believe this is in your district. Am I correct on this, or is it?
I believe so.
Okay, so Mr. Nodzo, the building in your district.
Yes, at one time this was a new building. It was constructed many, many years ago. And now we are in the 21st century, and we're looking at possibly building a new building. Why should we build a new building? Well, number one, we could build it so that it's energy efficient. There's no worries about asbestos problems, heating, lighting, broadband up to snuff, ready to go. There's several other county departments that are spread around the city. We need to look at that. We need to see how much money are we spending to keep those facilities up and running with gas and electric, with rent, and look at both of them, problem solve, and see down the road What is the best plan? If it's a new building we look at, we have to have a long, hard study on how we're going to do it, how the monies are going to be gained to do it, and the support from the city and county. If the new building is refurbished, is it going to be up to snuff for the 21st century? And is it going to be something that 50 years down the road, is it still going to be effective?
Thank you, Mr. Nodzo. Mr. Lattimore, the issue of what to do with the county office building. You have 2 minutes to finish up.
There was a time down in Binghamton where they had one of their equipment blow up, and there was PCBs all through the building. Our issue is asbestos all through the building. And what I would like to do is remove or take, there was somebody who was going to buy the Finger Lakes Mall, and I wanted to rent from them the back half or something and move the operation over there so we could clean the whole building all at once and just move our operations over there and see whether or not one floor works better than having the elevators and what have you. So I'm all in favor of cleaning up what we have and then make a decision then as to whether or not we move back in. You know, we are spread out in different buildings, whether or not that makes sense to build a new building or a new campus. But I think Mr. Lesh, your paper responded very well to his comments about how to analyze that situation and come up with the best solution numbers-wise for the taxpayers. So I'm all in favor of you know, seeing if we could have a joint partnership with private sector, see whether or not we can get through that.
We'll now turn to closing statements, and as we said at the beginning, we flipped a coin to see which order you were going into. Robert Nodzo, who is on the Democratic and Auburn First Party, will have 2 minutes to make his closing statement. Mr. Nodzo.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Need these things now. I'm a retired teacher, a teacher on a fixed income, as many are in my district. They are concerned as well as I am about taxes, maintaining services, and knowing when they turn the faucet on, their water is safe. As your county legislator, I will bring new ideas and energy to my position, plus hard work and perseverance, something my parents instilled into me as a youngster. Problem solving with my fellow legislators, working together to keep the county and my district's progress in step. I come to this candidacy with an open mind and a willingness towards goals and outcomes, leaving my political hat in the hallway and working to do the job our voters elect us to do, standing strong for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nodzo. We'll now hear from the incumbent, Mr. Lattimore, who is on the Republican, Conservative, and Independence lines. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement as well.
I just want to say I forgot to mention that one of the critical things that we need to have is a secondary supply of water. I have worked with OCC, Mr. Hooker, he's the executive director, make sure that we have a backup system of water. But in closing, this opportunity today to share my point of view and thought leadership on my efforts to create a public policy roadmap locally and roadmap to employment and economic development initiatives for Cuyahoga County in the new employment and work environment in cloud, climate, clean energy, cybersecurity, digital information, smart logistic business sectors. This work is incomplete. I'm seeking re-election to another term as county legislator so I can finish the work effort and create enduring and legacy community assets and smart infrastructure that can attract business activities in the county for the benefit of all stakeholders interested in the county. Hopefully, upon reflecting and evaluating of what I have shared and emphasized today, you will concur in my assessment and point of view and reward the thought, leadership, and determination with your support. I really do appreciate your support in the past, and I appreciate on November 7th you voting for me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Thank you, Mr. Nodzo. Thank you for both coming into the studio, and this is taped by the students here at the college. We want to also thank you for putting yourselves out there and wish you well in the last, I think, 10 days left in the campaign. We want to thank Mr. Boyer, as always, for his questions, and we want to also thank you, the viewers, for taking the time to listen over the last hour to the candidates for the 13th Legislative District. We will be back on Tuesday with our final forum. It is the Race for City Council. It will be on October 31st. It is, yes, oddly enough, Halloween. We'll bring you all 4 candidates on the ballot, including incumbents Debbie McCormick and Terry Cuddy, who are being challenged by John Camardo and Adam Miller. And we'll return to our regular programming after Election Day. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll have Senator John DeFrancisco in here, Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Perazzola, and Business Manager Lisa Green to talk about foundation aid, as well as President Brian Durant to talk about the college, as well as shows on Hospice of the Finger Lakes, which celebrates its 30th anniversary of doing great work here in our community, and an update on the Shines Theater. Because of the number of forums that we are having, the Citizen is putting on its website, auburnpub.com, as well as the college through its YouTube site, are putting these forums up immediately upon they're being taped. You can also tune in to the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, over the weekend. They'll be played on channels 1298 for Spectrum and Fios 31 for Verizon. So, with all that being said, we always enjoy your questions and your thoughts. You can mail them to us at P.O. Box, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, or at cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow.